Okay, everything you thought you knew about 16th century Japanese history, yeah, it might actually be completely wrong. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a historical mystery that, well, it isn't just some dusty old textbook footnote. It's a massive, surprisingly modern geopolitical thriller. We are diving deep into the secret war of Toyotomi Hideyoshi. And trust me, it's going to absolutely flip your perspective upside down.
Picture this. The year is 1592, and Japan launches this unprecedented massive army. We're talking 160,000 strong right into the Korean peninsula and toward the Asian continent. But here's the massive question that really puzzled me when I was looking through the sources. There was absolutely no direct continental threat to Japan at the time. The Ming dynasty wasn't attacking them, so why on earth would you launch such a colossal, super risky invasion when your own borders are completely secure?
For centuries, traditional history has kind of just brushed this off. They blamed it on the senility of an aging ruler, or maybe uncontrollable megalomania, or, sheer greed to acquire more land for his vassals. But actually, let's scratch that. Forget those old theories for a second. The reality we're uncovering today is that this wasn't madness at all. It was a highly calculated, preemptive geopolitical defense strategy. Hideyoshi was basically playing a massive game of chess, and he saw moves ahead that literally no one else did.
Section 1. The threat from the sea.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at a massive paradigm shift. See, for all of its prior history, any external threat to the Japanese archipelago came directly from the Asian continent. But now, in the 16th century, for the very first time, a completely new threat emerged from the ocean. Portugal and Spain were pushing their colonial expansion and military reach right up toward Japan from the southern seas. It was a totally unprecedented maritime threat.
Just think about the global map back then. By the late 1500s, Spain had already conquered Mexico, Peru, and, crucially, the neighboring Philippines. So Hideyoshi's paranoia, it wasn't actually paranoia at all. Looking at the board, European empire building was a terrifying and very, very close reality. The Spanish Empire was literally knocking on his southern door, and they had a serious track record of complete domination.
The European Conquest Master Plan.
Listen to how explicit this gets. In 1576, Francisco de Sunday, who is the Spanish governor of the Philippines, wrote directly to his king. He stated, "Military invasion is necessary to secure trade bases in Ming." I mean, wow, this wasn't some vague colonial wish, right? This was a documented, state-level intention to conquer the Asian mainland. The Europeans weren't just showing up to trade silk and spices. They were actively planning a massive military operation.
And the European missionaries who were already there? They were taking notes. In 1582, Jesuit Alessandro Valignano wrote, "Japanese are very brave. In the coming conquest of Ming, Japan will be useful." They were openly evaluating the local Japanese population, not as spiritual equals, but purely as potential mercenary assets for their own imperial ambitions. They were literally scouting local talent for a massive continental war.
And honestly, it gets even wilder. In 1585, Jesuit Caspar Coelho actually requested that soldiers, cannons, and warships be sent over. His argument? He said, converted Japanese will be good soldiers to conquer Ming. So these weren't just harmless religious figures spreading the faith. Some of them were acting remarkably like advanced military operatives, laying the complete groundwork for a future invasion force. Now, Hideyoshi's intelligence network picked up on all of this. He saw these missionaries acting completely autonomously within his borders. He discovered the horrifying reality that Japanese citizens were actively being sold into slavery overseas. And perhaps most alarming of all, he realized that Christian daimyos, the local Japanese warlords, were demonstrating ultimate loyalty to the Jesuits over him. To Hideyoshi, the writing was clearly on the wall. A European-backed domestic rebellion was actively brewing.
Geopolitical preemptive counterattack.
So when you look at the timeline, that famous 1592 invasion, it wasn't just some sudden whim. It was a rapid, highly calculated escalation. Look at this. In 1587, he banishes the missionaries. By 1590, he demands submission from Korea and Ryukyu. In 1591, he is literally sending threats to Portuguese India and the Spanish Philippines. Sending 160,000 troops across the sea the very next year was just the violent climax of a deeply planned 5-year geopolitical defense strategy.
And here is an absolutely crucial distinction that flips the entire narrative. Hideyoshi's true target wasn't actually Korea. He demanded a pathway through Korea to attack Ming China. And when they refused, well, he invaded. Conquering the continent was his ultimate prize because he firmly believed it was the only way to build a geopolitical fortress large enough to block European maritime expansion. The Korean peninsula was really just a stepping stone to his real objective.
And you know what? His aggressive posturing totally worked. The Spanish in the Philippines absolutely panicked. Knowing the ferocious strength of Japanese samurai, the colonial governor immediately imposed martial law. He begged the king for urgent military reinforcements from Mexico, and he even requested permission to occupy Taiwan just to create a physical buffer zone against Hideyoshi's forces. This preemptive strike strategy had the exact psychological effect Hideyoshi intended.
The strategic hub, Ningbo. Now, this brings us to what I think is the most brilliant part of Hideyoshi's grand strategy. Consider the stark contrast between the cities of Beijing and Ningbo. Beijing was the ultimate symbol of political and imperial power in Ming China. But Ningbo was the economic heart. It was the central hub of Asian maritime trade. Hideyoshi wasn't just after political vanity. He deeply, profoundly understood the mechanics of global trade, and he wanted absolute economic dominance. His master plan was incredibly audacious, especially for the 1500s. He planned to move the Japanese emperor over to Beijing purely for the symbolism, but Hideyoshi himself intended to reside in Ningbo. From there, he could directly control the crucial trade routes stretching to Japan, the Philippines, Macau, Singapore, and India. By holding that specific choke point, he could completely suffocate the European colonial networks and permanently secure East Asia.
Echoes in modern strategy. 300. That is the staggering number of years separating Hideyoshi's 16th century strategic vision and Japan's 20th century strategic doctrines leading up to World War II. It's an enormous gap in time. We're talking entirely different eras, different technologies, totally different forms of government. And yet, the underlying strategic thought process remained incredibly, almost eerily consistent.
Let's just analyze the historical data impartially here. On the top, you have Hideyoshi's 16th century grand strategy to expel the European colonial threat, explicitly targeting Korea, Taiwan, Ryukyu, the Philippines, Ming China, and India. Now on the bottom, you have the 20th century Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, aiming to expel Western imperial powers targeting the exact same regions. Despite entirely different eras and political systems, the geographic strategic maps are nearly identical.
Which really brings us to a profound realization. History repeats itself because geography does not change. Japan's physical location, as an island nation off the coast of a massive continent, has essentially forced it to grapple with the exact same strategic realities and defensive lines century after century. The ocean, the continent, the trade choke points, it's like a giant puzzle where the board remains exactly the same, even as the players swap out over the hundreds of years.
So I want to leave you with this provocative question today. If the completely unchanged geography of the Japanese archipelago dictated its grand strategy over 400 years ago, how is that very same map silently shaping the geopolitical struggles of tomorrow? It's definitely something to keep in mind the next time you look at global news. Thanks for exploring this history with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.